In today's video, we're looking at one half of the insanely productive Iowa State wide receiver tandem. Specifically today, we're looking at Jaylin Noel, wide receiver out of Iowa State. What are his strengths and weaknesses? How do we think he's utilized at the next level? What's his draft stock looking like? And most importantly, how do we think he's going to do for us in fantasy? Watch to the end of this video and you should have a good idea. Okay, so in terms of height and weight for Jaylin Noel, he's give or take 5'11", 200 pounds per PFF. And his date of birth, he's about 22 and a half years old right now. So that means he's going to be 23 years old for his rookie season. He's a little older, but I gotta say, I'm very happy this guy stayed as a senior. It really helped his draft stock out a bunch. And you see it in the production. Every single year, he stepped it up. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. Like, he's insanely productive in his senior year. And you see more yards, more targets, more receptions, more touchdowns each and every year. That checks us off all the boxes for me. As a true freshman, 269 yards, 0 touchdowns. He wasn't utilized very much. In terms of a sophomore, though, doubled his yards, 3 touchdowns, almost doubled his receptions. That's very good. That's actually solid numbers for a sophomore, so that's really good. In terms of his junior season, that's when he really started to gain some draft buzz for sure. 820 yards and 7 touchdowns. You see his PFF grades going up every year too, so we like to see that. And then this past year, Iowa State really surprised a lot of people, even sneaking into the college football playoff. I mean, they were absolutely killing it this year. So, their quarterback was playing great. He was able to support Higgins, who had a very good year. It's going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. And then Noel as well, who might be a 3rd or 4th round pick himself, if not higher than that. So, this past year, he was able to support this season of 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 15 yards per reception. And you see his targets to reception ratio, 67% is very, very solid. So, moving on to some advanced stats for Noel, we looked at every draft-eligible FBS wide receiver with at least 50 targets this past season. Good for about 143 players, which is, a big sample size. In terms of routes, he ran 495 routes, which was good for 93.4 of his team's routes, which is pretty solid. A lot of routes as well. They ran a ton of routes at Iowa State this year. Now, a thing that I do like about Noel is his versatility. Now, he's mainly going to be a slot guy at the next level, but you see every single year, outside of his first couple of years at Iowa State, he was able to play 20 to 30%, if not more, out wide at the Z position. Obviously, Higgins is going to be your X, but that's really good. That means he's got experience there, and NFL teams can play him at the Z if they need to, which opens his, opportunities up a ton. In terms of his yards per route run, 2.62 was 18th in the sample size, which is very solid. And his PFF receiving grade was 81.7, which was 17th in the sample size. So, a top 20 receiver. This receiving class isn't super crazy by any means, but definitely solid. His film is a little bit better than what these numbers suggest, but, we kind of use these stats and then film and kind of marry them together to find out what exactly we think about these players. In terms of yak per reception, 4.2 was 103rd in the sample size. He's a fast guy and he's very twitchy, which is kind of surprising that he only has, that much yak per reception. I don't really know what to make of that number. I saw him get open a lot and run upfield a good bit, but I also did see him make, these really tight window throws and where he goes down right afterwards. So maybe that affects it in some way. In terms of missed tackles forced, though, 3 was tied for 118th in the sample size. If you wrap this guy up, he's probably going down, but he is a little hard to get a hold to due to his elusiveness. So moving on to the contested catch percentage, this is something that kind of surprised me. He had 25 opportunities in contested catch situations, which I was not expecting. I was thinking more of the 10 to 15 range. but he brought in 13 of them, which is surprising considering he's kind of like this smaller slot, agile receiver. So you wouldn't expect him to be in this many contested catch situations. But 52% is in that threshold that we like to see. So that is solid. We've seen better, like, Trey Harris and Xavier Restrepo, those guys. In terms of his targets per game, he had 8.5 targets a game and 5.71 receptions per game. That's solid. That means over half of his targets, were receptions. That's good. That's efficient. In terms of his yards per game, 85.21 on, I think, 14 total games. That means he's very consistent across the entirety of the season, so that is good. Now, in terms of his touchdowns, he was a little light on the touchdowns, 0.57 per game, but Higgins was getting a lot of those as well, so there is that. All right, so looking at some more advanced stats, specifically him versus man and zone coverages, his PFF grade versus man was 73.0, which was 39th in the sample size, and then his yards per out run versus man was around that same percentile, 2.18, which was 40th in the sample size. Like we say a lot with these slot guys, they're generally better against zone coverages than man, just because, you can hit them on these shallow crosses and things like that. So, I don't necessarily think he's going to be the best versus man, but, he can get the job done. He's just not as good at it. In terms of his PFF grade versus zone, though, 83.5 was 4th in the sample size, and yards per route run versus zone was 2nd in the sample size with 3.51 per route run, which is very good. In terms of his zone production, very, very solid. He definitely finds the soft spots in the zone in a lot of these situations. So, he's very educated when it comes to beating zone coverage. PFF grade on screens, 82.2 was tied for 32nd in the sample size. They gave him some screens from time to time just to get him out in open space because he is very fast. So, I'd like to see that grade be a little bit better, but, it is what it is. In terms of his PFF grade in the slot, though, 79.4 was 23rd in the sample size, so nothing super special there. And then in terms of his first downs caught, 45 was tied for 18th in the sample size. I will say some of these numbers were affected because of the vertical X receiver in Jaden Higgins that was across from him, so he did get a lot of Noel's production, and it probably hampered some of his grades as well per PFF. So we do kind of take these with a little bit of a grain of salt, but, they are relatively accurate, I would say. So before getting to the grades for Jaylin Noel, I want to give a brief overview on him just to give you guys a refresher. So Jaylin Noel is a wide receiver out of Iowa State. He's give or take 5'11", 200 pounds, and is a 4-year senior. Our evaluation of him is, I think he's worthy of a late third-round pick. He's currently projected to be in the 4th round. I think that's a little too low for him. I think he'll sneak his way into that 3rd round, especially with how he performed at the Combine. Now, my high comp for him is Brandon Cooks, a guy that has had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. He hasn't done that great in Dallas due to injuries and things like that, but earlier on in his career, he was a very productive slot guy that could burn defenses a lot. Noel definitely can do that for sure. And then my low comp for him was KJ Hamler, a guy that kind of just got lost in the mix on the teams that he was on and got injured as well. That also didn't help his draft stock at all. But these 4th-round guys and these 3rd-round guys that get drafted from time to time, if they have a bad camp or they have problems adjusting, I think Noel's going to have some learning experience in terms of his route running. But, if he doesn't clean that stuff up, I could see him easily falling, 7th or 8th on the depth chart, and then he just never really gets to be on the field, right? He's just a rotational guy from time to time. So I definitely could see that. In terms of his official grade, I gave him a 71 out of 100, which is on the lower end of the good prospects. In terms of his route running, you kind of see 3.5s across the board. He's fast and agile, so he can cut these routes pretty well, but he pretty much relies solely on athleticism from what we saw. It's nothing special in any of his routes, right? Which is surprising that he was over 1,000 yards this year in terms of his production. He's just not super honed in to the nuances terms of the route running goes, right? And just his skills as a route runner just need to be refined a little bit. Short routes, he ran a lot of, screens, hitches, quick slants, things like that. Medium routes, he ran some crossing routes where, he ended up giving some drops due to his worry of getting hit over the middle of the field, kind of worried about the contact, led to some concentration drops. And then deep routes, like I said, he doesn't really use releases all that much or double moves. I mean, we may have saw a couple, but nothing that really stuck off the film for us for sure. So, he's just purely athletic, and that's what he uses in order to run these routes. So he's definitely going to need to clean that up at the next level. In terms of his speed, we gave him an 8 out of 10. He is on the higher end in terms of speed for us. He ran like a 4.39 at the combine, which definitely shows up on film. He's quick. And what's even more important to me is the acceleration. He's super quick to burst off the line. I mean, he gets to top speed very quickly, so that's why you see him, being effective on these slants. I mean, it's very hard to play against whenever this guy's just bursting off the line and doing a quick slant on you, crossing your face, and then he goes for 12, 13 yards, and then you can't do anything about that. So that's why he's really good versus zone, because he cuts in between these zones really fast, and then quarterback throws it into the tight window, and then he gets some extra yardage. So in terms of speed and acceleration, he's definitely got that and will not have any issues per se separating in terms of that. In terms of his deceleration, though, snaps on his routes were fine. His cut downs on your hitches and his screens and stuff, his stop and go ability was fine. Nothing super crazy though. In terms of his agility though, we gave him a 4 out of 5. This guy's super agile, can utilize spin moves, juke moves, kind of stop, go. He's very shifty after the catch, which is surprising that his yak per reception was so low. That definitely did surprise me. I did see some shifty things after the catch for him. And then in terms of his change of direction, this might be his biggest strength for me, is his ability to catch the ball and then immediately explode upfield in whatever direction he needs to do. Wherever he sees open space, he just explodes. That's something that I think is pretty special in terms of his particular profile. Now, moving on to catching, he was relatively fine in terms of just, in these regular catching situations, but when it came to over the middle of the field, he definitely seemed a little worried about the contact and just getting absolutely hammered by these linebackers and safeties. So we did see a few of those concentration drops there. So we gave him a 3.5 there. In terms of his catching traffic, same thing. Concentration drops, in tight windowed throws and things like that. He can get the ball dislodged on these, contested catches and things like that. I will say his contested catch percentage is fine, but it's nothing super special, right? It's in that minimum threshold for us, so we gave him a 3.5 there. Run after catch, he's relatively easy to tackle once you get your hands on him. So we did knock him a little bit there, but he's very shifty after the catch, so he's definitely above average there. In terms of dog factor, he's a very competitive guy that runs really hard, and he's very explosive. And he's got that little kind of bulldog to him. He'll talk to you after the catch for sure, and just let you know that you just got burned. Things like that, just that competitive, apexness that I'd like to see out of my receivers. Now, we knocked him a little bit because of his catch and traffic ability, where he likes to, use these concentration drops sometimes, to to not really intentionally to avoid contact, but it definitely shows that he's a little bit worried about the contact. In terms of analytics, we gave him a 5 out of 10. It could be boosted up a little bit because we did see his numbers increase every single year, but he only had one really productive year, and it wasn't super touchdown heavy either, so that's probably fair. In terms of projected draft capital, though, we gave him a 2.5 out of 5. He's going to be in that 4th round in terms of his projection. I think he'll go a little sooner than that, so we gave him a 2.5 out of 5 there. In terms of his XZ slot ability, though, he's definitely going to be having no issues playing in the slot and at the Z as long as he cleans up his route running nuances. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him at the X position from time to time, but that's definitely not where he's superior at. Now, in terms of my worries and limitations for him, he's got raw route running that I think he's going to need to refine. And, he's gotten better every single year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he cleans that up, in camp. And then his catch and traffic skills. A lot of receivers have this issue where, they don't want to get absolutely clobbered and, kind of are looking at this safety or linebacker running at them, and they kind of take their eyes off the ball a little bit and they drop. They leads to concentration drops, right? If he can clean that up, that makes him even better as a prospect. So, where does Jaylin Noel stack up with the rest of the 2025 class that we've graded thus far? Well, we've graded a total of about 25 to 28 players. We haven't had them all listed here because we don't want to reveal the players that we haven't done videos on yet. But currently, Jaylin Noel is towards the bottom of the wide receivers that we've graded thus far. I will say he's not in the lower tiers at all. He's our wide receiver 16 out of 26, which, is in that, slightly below average to average tier for us. I mean, in all honesty, if he could just clean up the route running, he could easily be in the Kyle Williams, Matthew Golden range for sure. Once he gets that cleaned up and some of the catching issues, he could even be in the 80s for sure. But, as of right now, he's definitely got some flaws, and we'll definitely need to clean those up during camp whenever he gets drafted. Last but not least, we want to give a special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mazjack, and Infamy MTG for supporting the channel. We really do appreciate it. Now, if you want to become a Patreon member yourself, you'll gain access to a lot of really cool things like a private Discord server, private live streams, early access to videos, and most importantly, custom videos that we do specifically per request for all of our Patreon members. So that's really, really cool. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out in terms of the algorithm. And if you haven't seen a particular prospect on this channel thus far, you can go ahead and comment below. We'd definitely be interested to seeing some of your recommendations. And finally, thank you guys for watching the video.